I remember reading this story when it originally came out and thinking how, just weird and strange it was. And after watching this, it only got weirder.
Oh yeah. Did something happen? Oh no.
I mean, you've worked on a lot of stories, but with this, I mean, you wrote a book and you did the documentary. But how did this one grab such a hold on you to spend so much time with it?
Yeah, yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, I think uh there was something about it. At first I didn't really think much of it at all. I just got this random tip. It was a scam. I just thought, well, this is gonna be some random scam like any other scam in Hollywood. And then I started talking to folks about it, victims and the investigator, and it just was so strange, and it was also so complicated. It didn't make sense. And so I spent quite a bit of time just trying to wrap my head around it. And I think that process of just really sitting with it and trying to understand how it worked, why didn't it make sense, what was going on, that sort of drew me in. And then the stories of these victims were so compelling. I mean, they were so scarred, and they'd lost all this money, but they were really just damaged. A lot of them were really messed up by this, and it affected their lives, their families, their ability to trust other people, to trust themselves. I mean, it shook them to their core, a lot of them. And there were so many of them. Every week I would hear from another one and then another one, and the numbers kept growing. And as the weeks and then the months and then the years went by, it just kept sort of evolving in all these strange ways, and the layers would get peeled back, and then I would discover some new component of it. And so it just wasn't a simple or straightforward story. And I think that appealed to me as a storyteller, and it just provided so much of the engine to write the book and then do the doc, because there was just this sort of endless terrain to explore. And that's not always the case with stories. Sometimes they're pretty cut and dry. Even if the circumstances are more dramatic in a way, like a murder, or I don't know, something in a war zone or something, they can be fairly straightforward. Whereas this, at no point was it straightforward ever. And I think that uh, that made it really compelling and interesting.
I'm an actor as well, and I just feel for those who are interviewed. Well, I mean, like everyone who is actually brave enough to be interviewed
Yeah.
for this, And did you ever find out how he was able to like single out those certain people who were he conned? I mean, like how did he find these sort of individual people who he kind of almost knew that it was he could do this to?
Yeah, well, there was a lot of research that went into it. And I think for every person who wound up on the phone and sort of in some kind of relationship with the scammer, there were many who didn't, who didn't sort of pass his initial cuts. Either they were too skeptical, or they didn't, fit some criteria that he was looking for. They weren't interested in, maybe taking it to the next level in terms of racy conversations, or they didn't want to travel to Indonesia or whatever. So there were certain parameters that people had to meet in order to make it into the final bucket of victims. But there was a lot of research. Back to your question, you know these days, and I don't know if you're like most people, but we put everything online. We're on social media, we're on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and IMDb, and we have websites, and we do photos and blogs and newsletters, and like we're just everywhere. And so there's a huge amount of information about these people that often they themselves put out there because they're trying to build their careers and make a name for themselves and stuff. So it's easy to mine the public register for information that can then, in the hands of a skillful manipulator, be used and crafted and sculpted in ways such that they can kind of develop a narrative that will be compelling, to the person on the other end of the phone. And I've said this before, but I think there are a couple elements to the scam itself that make it um, kind of remarkable. One is the voice work. Obviously, it's impressive, but I think the more substantial and impressive feat is the persuasion that goes into crafting these really elaborate fantasies and these stories that once the hook is in, people want to believe. They want to go along on this ride, whatever it is, and it's different for everybody. But that I think is the really ballsy, bold uh, step. If you sit with that a little bit, I think it becomes clear.
I watching the documentary, I loved the videos of where you were talking to him on Zoom. I guess it was Zoom. Like just sort of watching your face as because he could talk, man, and he as he was talking and talking, like your face was like kind of equal parts fascinated and also equal parts like I got to take out the trash, I got to feed the dog, like what were you thinking just during those times?
I mean, you just nailed it. It was like, yeah, I've got to, I don't know, go to the grocery store. I've got to take my kids to this or that thing. I don't know. I've got to go to the bathroom. I've got to talk to my wife about something. Yeah, and I'd be stuck up in that room for hours, and those, I don't know if this comes through in the doc, but those weren't the only conversations. I mean, I'd get called all the time. I'd be out, with my kids or at the grocery store or in the park or whatever, and I'd be getting these calls, and I couldn't always take them. So yeah, for the period of time that we were in conversation, it was a relentless, pretty much a full-time job all day, every day for many weeks.
At one point, you actually confront him like on the street. Uh, like, were you at all nervous about doing that? Because you'd never like met him before. Like, you don't know what he could have done. I mean, was your heart like racing as you like walked up to him?
Yeah, it was. I'll be honest, it was. I I've done that kind of thing a few times in my career as a journalist. It's never particularly easy or comfortable, especially when people don't want to talk to you. Um, and it's not my preference, but in this case, I tried many times and so forth. But yeah, it was scary. I didn't know anywhere near as much about him in that moment as I came to learn over the subsequent week. So I didn't know what his reaction would be, if he would lash out or be violent in some way, or threaten me or run away or hit me, or I mean, I just had no idea. And yeah, it was a little scary, and my heart was going pretty fast.
Where you hit it well. So,
Thank you.
uh, and also towards the end of the doc, when he was opening up about his life and things, do you feel like he was still trying to like manipulate you, or do you think he was being genuine? Because as I was watching it, I started feeling somewhat like sympathetic towards him, but then in the back of my head, I was like, no, 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 he like screwed all these people.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, in the moment when I was filming that and when I was in the conversation, I had kind of the same reaction you did, which was these sort of wild swings between, on the one hand, feeling like this was somebody who was looking for a human connection, and I was that connection in that moment, and to listen and be empathetic and really hear what he was trying to tell me. And so, yeah, it engendered a certain amount of sympathy on my part. And at the same time, like you, I had another narrative running in my head at the same time, which was saying, wait, but he did this, that, and the other thing. And, I had sort of the victims' voices on a steady loop, reminding me of all the other terrible things that had transpired. So, as I think I say in the documentary, there was a real kind of cognitive dissonance, trying to sort of in real time, navigate that emotional landscape of feeling on the one hand sympathy and kind of a desire to understand, and then on the other hand, a real, very sincere skepticism and a desire to push back and to question and to, be a hard-hitting journalist, and to get to the truth, because ultimately that was what was the most important thing to me. And sometimes, sometimes one strategy works and sometimes another strategy works. And it's difficult to know from moment to moment, second to second, literally in a conversation like that, what's going to work. Sometimes if you're too sympathetic, you're going to get rolled over
Mm,
and lied to. And if you're too pushy or whatever, you're going to alienate somebody and maybe prematurely cut off the connection. And so I was always trying to balance those, and with an eye toward trying to understand, really trying to understand and get to the truth of what happened.
this con was so like complex. I mean, you almost have to be impressed by how he did like juggled all these things that he had going on.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, I think that's right up there at the top of the things that kept me interested, was just the complexity of it, as you say, the immense energy really required to sort of simultaneously, be handling all these phone calls with like multiple people at the same time, all the people in Indonesia who were being, drawn in, to help in some way or to drive people around or whatever. And then, being a food influencer, fending off uh, people who were clamoring for money. I mean, yeah, it's just sort of insane. I mean, we often joked about how, and I asked him this too, but if he had put his mind and his energy to something productive and good, he would have had immense success, I think, because he clearly had, energy and a kind of a weird work ethic.
Mhm.
Um, he just chose to direct it in this way.
Yeah. So the end of the doc, it's not like it doesn't really sort of close the story yet. But for you personally, do you feel like, or have you gotten closure on this yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I'd be happy to move on to something else. It took up a good chunk of time, and it was really interesting for me and eye-opening, and making the doc was immensely rewarding and fulfilling. And writing the book, of course, was a real joy. Um, so all of those things I feel good about and proud of. But yeah, I'd be happy to move on.
Are you like what's going on next? Do you have anything coming up?
Yeah. I do. I'm going to be launching a Substack pretty soon, and I'm in the midst of another book that I can't divulge yet, but and yeah, just looking for other projects and stuff.
Nice. Well, I'm looking forward to what you do next because I thought this was great.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate it and
Yeah.
appreciate your interest. And
Yeah. Well, thank you, Scott. Thank you for taking the time. And yeah, now you can go to the grocery store and not have to worry about, taking phone calls. All
thanks a lot. Thanks a
right.
lot,
Thanks.
man.
All right.
All right.
Bye.